We continue our discussion about the tension in Ferguson, Missouri, where law enforcement is preparing to deal with a possible outburst of violence. Joining us is Timothy Murphy, who is a former deputy director of the FBI, and he's here in our New York City studios. Welcome to Arise America, Tim. Thanks for being here. So the FBI has been asked to come in and to partner with law enforcement in anticipation of the announcement of the grand jury's decision. First of all, is that usual or unusual?
It's actually standard operating procedure for the FBI. So I wouldn't characterize it as they were asked, right? This is something the FBI does every single day. Now, is this a bigger event and possibly an outcome that there could be some type of violence in some of these demonstrations? But the FBI, if this was happening somewhere else, the FBI is working behind the scenes with the state and local partners, because state and locals don't work for the FBI, they're not subordinate, but the FBI certainly shares information if they have any information that they can gather through legal means, that anybody there, and you mentioned in your earlier segment about elements that would disrupt people from demonstrating and really exercising their First Amendment rights.
Okay, so I understand then it's usual, and you use the word behind the scenes, that the FBI, it's standard procedure to be there and they don't have to wait to be asked to be there. How unusual, though, is it for the Missouri governor who comes out, makes a public statement on what the state is going to do in preparation for this announcement, and a part of that announcement is that the FBI will be working in conjunction with law enforcement. Is it unusual to be so public about it, to make that announcement? That seems to me to be making a point.
Well, I think it's going to vary from community to community. It's going to vary from governor to governor, from mayor to mayor, who they want involved, what they want to say at a press conference. I wouldn't make I don't think it's a significant statement for him to say it. I think what he's saying is the FBI is going to help us. What I would also say is the FBI is also doing a civil rights investigation behind the scene under the auspices of the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice is doing another investigation on pattern and practices of this police department. So, I mean, you can say the FBI is there to help, and they are. This is what they do, but they're also there for oversight as well, right? You want them on the scene because ultimately they're the ones that carry out civil rights investigations under the Department of Justice in this country.
Beyond those investigations for the practices of law enforcement, as well as whether or not Michael Brown's civil rights were violated, but as it relates to managing the protest and how this might turn into unrest, what are some of the roles then for the FBI?
Normally in this situation, it's information sharing. So the FBI after 9/11 has set up this incredible infrastructure about information sharing, which they had to do and we had to do under fighting terrorism. But what that's evolved to is that there's been this melding of information sharing between all police departments on all criminal type of violations, or all what they call all hazards. So every single day this is going on. In this instance, I mean, will there be more information? Will the FBI be a little bit more involved trying to monitor, that element, either social networks or any type of activity that another group is starting to gear up and organize? They'll give their experiences. There's behavioral analysis done on crowds and those type of events, and they'll give leads to the state and local police department, or for lack of a better word, guidance on what you should be looking for to make sure that you can actually prevent things from happening, as opposed to in the old days letting it happen and then reacting in the way that we've seen in the past.
When I and my colleague, my executive producer, Michelle, we went to Missouri for Michael Brown's memorial service back in August. And what we were struck by was there were a number of people that had gathered at the memorial site for their own purposes. They weren't there necessarily to memorialize Michael Brown or to protest the injustice or perceived. They were there to promote whatever their cause, and some of them you might consider to be fringe. Is this an opportunity for the FBI to sort of keep tabs on those kinds of elements?
They're not, in this country today, I know what you're asking, but in this day, for say the FBI keep tabs on people, the FBI is on the Attorney General guidelines and a domestic and investigative guidelines, where really an agent can be held accountable both criminally, and otherwise for under the professional guidelines, that they just can't monitor people for the sake of monitoring people. If they see somebody that's we don't go up and they don't monitor that person. Now, if they have a predicate act, if they're part of a group, if they've been in violence before or created violence before, they're part of a gang, those type of things. If they have some predicate act, they can certainly gather more information, but they're not going to see a group over there and say, okay, we're going to start monitoring that group just because we think they're bad. That's just not the way it's going to work. And you're not going to have agents do that, because they're going to be taken to task if they do that.
Okay, I understand. I get it. Unfortunately, we got to leave it right there. It's fascinating, though. Timothy Murphy, thank you so much.
All right,
appreciate it.
Thanks.